and welcome to the Spiraling Higher podcast, hosted by me, Sam, mindset and manifestation coach.
And me, Gina, your biz and mindset coach. We're here to support you on your spiritual journey by bringing you intimate and raw conversations about healing, manifestation, consciousness, and spirituality.
We hope this podcast makes you feel less alone as you become aware of your patterns and limiting beliefs to up-level your life, manifest like a boss, and together, spiral higher.
Hey, Spiralers. Welcome back to the Spiraling Higher podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sam. And of course, I'm joined by Gina.
I'm here.
And I'm actually tuning in from Thailand. So because we love you all and we love ourselves and we're so committed to this podcast, we are arranging through a 14-hour time difference to make this happen.
Because we care so much.
Mm-hmm. And actually, today's topic was inspired by something I actually noticed within myself. So keep in mind that Gina and I as coaches are constantly diving into our own patterns with a lot of curiosity, little subtle ways, or even overt ways that we shift and change with or without other people around us. And one of the things I notice when I'm traveling, especially if I'm getting to know people on a deeper level, which over here I am because my brother lives here. So getting to know his friends, I'm getting to know people he's really close with, people who are obviously from this culture. I'm starting to, and I told Gina this, I'm starting to notice just the differing value systems. And that's a beautiful thing to notice when you travel, that yes, your value system is not at the center of the universe. There are a multitude of different manuals or value systems that you can learn to live by or learn to question and challenge. But it has been interesting to see my value system be placed against a different cultures and to notice my response to that.
Yeah, I think that we're always kind of scanning. And even when we watch shows sometimes, I think it's interesting to observe different people's manuals and how we might respond, and even amongst each other. But I found your reflection on what you're going to share today really interesting. And I think something that people will really resonate with because it will show up in a lot of ways for us. And it might go missed without us seeing it, as it has for us both in many ways before.
Yeah, totally. I actually employed ChatGPT to help me figure this one out. And I should have just guessed it already off the top of my head. But basically, what I noticed, and I think this will be helpful for any of the people who identify as people pleasers out there, but also people who may not even realize that they are engaging in a form of people pleasing. Our intention for this episode was to sort of reveal the subtle ways in which you might still be people pleasing. Because I think the typical way we perceive people pleasing is I just say yes, always.
Yeah,
I can't say no. If they ask me to do this favor and I actually have a lot on my plate, I just still say yes. I'm a yes girl or a yes man. And I think that form of people pleasing is relatively easy to notice within ourselves. At least if you're listening to this podcast, right? You've got some self-awareness. You're able to see, wow, I say yes to a lot more things than I have the capacity to take on. That's interesting. But there are other more subtle forms of people pleasing that definitely slip under the radar.
I think there's a lot of really sneaky ways it shows up. It reminds me a lot of perfectionism when we recorded that episode, because I feel like perfectionism, a lot of people assume is like me wanting to be perfect.
Right.
And that's a very obvious way you can see it. But I think the forms of people pleasing that you're speaking on it's really an internalized people pleasing. I feel like that's one of the things that I've observed within myself is that there's not an external person or pressure outside of me that's causing me to people please, because it's actually already an internalized pressure within myself. And that's why it's so insidious, because we're not seeing an external thing. It's just kind of happening inside of us. And again, it goes unnoticed a lot unless we become aware of it.
Yeah, I love that you said internalize people pleasing. And then I had this phrase kind of come up in my mind as you were saying that, but it's sort of like an authenticity suppression. Right. And it's not like, you're right, there's not necessarily someone there who's saying, do this and be like this. You've internalized the ways that you think that people want you to be like and seem like, and then you're behaving under that. But yet there's no actually external pressure applying it. You've applied it to yourself. And so again, as I've been traveling, I've just noticed these differing value systems. And I'm also hanging out with a lot of athletes. So it's just really interesting, professional athletes, to hear what their day in a life is like, what they value. And also, I will be honest and say that obviously not everyone travels the world or lives their life thinking about everything in terms of what people value. But as a coach, I'm very curious about that.
Yeah.
So I've just been noticing it. And there was this part of me internally that was like, ooh, is my value system like incorrect? Like, just because I was surrounded by so many people who had these differing values, I started to very lightly question my own value system. And it gave me this sense of weakness. Like, I haven't noticed this feeling within myself in a really long time. So, of course, I was super curious about it. But I realized that if I wasn't a bit stronger in my ability to challenge my own thoughts, anyone or a previous version of me could easily fall into, I'm now going to morph and become the embodiment of this person's value system. And of course, the first people we do that with is our parents, right? We grow up in a household. We learn in this household, we value X, Y, and Z. And in order for you to feel worthiness, belonging, approval, you're like, I'm going to like X, Y, and Z too. That's what I'm going to build my life around. That's why your dad likes the Chicago Cubs and you like the Chicago Cubs. There is no inherent value in that team versus another team, but because you want belonging, you're like, yes, I'm also going to apply that to myself. And sometimes we're raised in households or societies that have values that feel very authentic for us to uphold, but a lot of times we don't. A lot of times it feels like a suppression of who we really are to maintain those values.
I think that's a thing. So, I mean, going back to kind of what that internalized people pleasing might feel like, once again, it's like no one's actually outside of you telling you this is what you need to believe. You don't actually have this external voice telling you to agree, to overextend yourself. But there's almost like this mentally rehearsed system inside of us that kind of unconsciously assumes what that person is going to respond with if we don't agree with them. And so it ends up being this very sneaky way where we adjust our thoughts, our beliefs, maybe even our tone, the way we respond without even realizing it, because our bodies, our nervous system has learned on a lot of levels that approval equals safety.
Yeah.
And so, especially when it comes to what you were just talking about, if we grew up wanting to please our parents and listen to them and obey and all those types of things, that can very much bleed into so many other ways, because once again, we can develop this survival strategy of having this internal people pleaser built in, where it just does it automatically, whether or not there is an external pressure.
Right. So, like, this form of people pleasing is not, I did all the chores, and so now my parents are going to be happy with me. It's, I'm going to unconsciously assume and become the embodiment of everything my parents value so that they will value me. And again, we don't just do this with parents. We'll start to do this with peers. We'll do this with colleagues. We'll do this with partners, right? And that's where it gets really sticky, because if we don't have a really strongly, consciously chosen set of values and beliefs, we will begin to assume other people's. And so even within myself, when I kind of noticed this slight weakening within my system, I was like, ooh, like, what is that? I had to actually really go in and figure out, oh, okay. Like, I was actually noticing that there was like a conflict in the values. And rather than holding this really powerful energy of two things can be true at once, my energy started to kind of suppress itself a little bit, and almost like it was definitely like I was trying to figure out, how can I appear like I uphold your values more? But then I went home and I was like, no, those are just their values. And it's really beautiful that I'm able to hold tightly to who I really am and what I really believe without condemning the other person, without suppressing my own self and succumbing to what they believe. I just allow both belief systems to coexist.
Yeah, because there isn't one that is more inherently right than the other. But I think what you're speaking to is such a huge form of people pleasing that I definitely have experienced. And it's basically when we lose our inner voice in the presence of a louder one.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when somebody really speaks with a lot of conviction and they're like, no, man, like, you got to do it like this, and this is the better way, our own knowing can start to feel like less valid or feel more quiet or like uncertain. And so, yes, sometimes it is just a lot of energy that we then kind of shrink to because honestly, a lot of us are afraid of being wrong or
Yeah.
looking stupid or if it's not the norm. So we might just shrink ourselves again so that we either get that approval or so that we can avoid the discomfort of having somebody not agree with us or for us to come across like we're not agreeing with them. Because I think that's the other one is we want to be agreeable.
Yes.
And so there is kind of this, you know what, I'm just going to nod along. But I love what you did where you checked with yourself, where you felt that internal disconnection and kind of like this doesn't align or there's something inside of me that doesn't feel aligned. And you discovered what your truth was in there and that this is just two value systems that are not, they're not aligned and that's okay. But I think what ends up happening a lot of times is, again, that goes so unnoticed and then we don't even question that. But I think that's where the transformation starts. It really is being able to observe and catch ourselves when we're noticing, oh, wow, like when I don't agree with this, or when this voice is louder than mine, let me just observe what does my voice do? And then it really is just continuously checking back in with yourself to ask, like, is that what I believe? You know, and I think it has to start there so that you can start to practice what your truth is and find safety in not being always agreeable and having a different value system because your value system is valuable on its own.
Yeah, I think it's like this pipeline too, where yes, you accept that, okay, I can't always be agreeable with everyone if I'm going to hold on tightly to my own value system that I've consciously chosen, which by the way, that does require you to really think consciously about what your values are. Right? Have you just assumed the values of your family? Have you just assumed the values of your culture? Or have you actively chosen them? And I think that's why I love travel so much, is I'm able to see that the Western individualistic capitalist value system is not something that's upheld everywhere else in the world. Like I can cherry pick and choose what parts of that I like that were a part of my conditioning, and then I can also throw them out. I can also include things that are valuable in other Asian cultures or South American cultures to create my unique value system. But it does require you to think about what they are and make sure you're living a life that reflects them. But once you move past that point and then you start to notice, okay, I'm in a new group or I'm joining a new community and I'm noticing that their value system is different, do we have enough fortitude and capacity to handle the natural somatic sensation we're going to have as psychosocial human beings where you start to feel wrong, which honestly is just the feeling of shame.
Totally.
It's just shame. We just feel this badness, this wrongness. And instead of being curious about that feeling, we're like, oop, I got to get away from this. And so we're just like, I'll just assume your value system. Never mind. Fuck what I said. Like, actually, I don't think that anymore. And I think like the slight, subtle ways that we actually experience this for the first time in childhood. I talked about this with a previous one-on-one client. If she listens, she'll know who she is. But we were talking about how she was listening to music in the car with her friend. And she was like, oh, I love this song. I love this band. And then her friend was like, oh, I hate this artist. Like their music sucks. And then without even thinking or challenging, she was like, oh, yeah, same. Like, ew, I hate these people. And then she noticed that she wasn't engaging with this music anymore that actually she really likes. And then it took her a while to realize, oh my God, I just assumed that her belief and experience of this band, of this music was superior to mine, but it's actually just different. And I'm allowed to fully enjoy and express myself through this music, even if she totally hates it. Like that's okay. And so I think what happens though in those moments is we feel that wrongness and that badness. Like, ooh, how could it be true that I love it, but you hate it? And we almost attribute rightness to their opinion. But we shouldn't be so quick to do that. We should be able to hold this like temporary somatic sensation of discomfort. Like, weird. You hate it? I love it. Okay. I'm going to continue to love it. Right. But we have to be willing to stay with that feeling long enough before we shut it down and immediately assume the other person's perspective.
Like that's not a dead end, or it doesn't have to be. Yeah, there can be more road after that if we choose to pave one. But I do think it has to start with that awareness, like your client, how she was like, oh my gosh, wait, like I I actually do like them. And why did I even do that? And I think we get to kind of unpack that that wasn't our voice. That was maybe just that nervous system response, or maybe this internal, people pleaser that's just like, just be agreeable so that we're liked. And I think that's also what's peppered into all of this is just, we don't want to lose connection at the end of the day. And so I think especially when you meet somebody that you're resonating with, there's a fear that if I say this, is this going to somehow damage or create a disconnection in this connection that I really love and appreciate and I'm having fun with. And so like you said, I think there gets to be space for us to have that disagreement, and or not that even it is a disagreement, but I really echo what your client said, because I definitely did that a lot when I was growing up, because I moved so often that I really did have to shapeshift who the hell I was to fit in. And I think just whether or not you moved around or not, we grow up trying to fit in.
Right.
And so the fear of not fitting into that is so ingrained in us that our systems, our nervous systems will really do what it needs to, again, for safety. And I think that's why we need to really ask, like, because sometimes I think the body almost responds before the mind. It's kind of just this immediate, like,
right. Like that was me.
Just go along with this.
Right. That was like that feeling of weakening where I was like, it was like that slight shrinking. And then I was like, wait, what am I doing? Like, why is this happening? And yes, I do want to say that you're absolutely right. We are these social mammals, and we were evolved to grow in these tribes and these communities. So yes, it is true that we are going to want to socially mirror people. But now that we are a very modern civilization where we are not actually at risk of losing access to safety, shelter, belonging, these things, we have to really question the cost of what it is to socially mirror so strongly and so unconsciously. And ultimately, the cost is the connection to yourself.
Exactly.
Which actually means that you can't connect to the other person because you're not even really being truly yourself anymore in that relationship.
Hey spiralers, it's that time of year again where we invite you to take our relationship and healing journey to a whole new level. So if you've been craving deep healing and aligned sisterhood, this is your invitation to the exclusive annual Spiraling Higher retreat this June for a conscious, healing, playful weekend. Imagine waking up to ocean views and stunning sunrises in La Paz, Mexico, near Cabo, where you'll spend 4 transformative days with like-minded women, all here for the same purpose: to awaken your hidden dreams, unleash your full potential, and break free from the patterns that hold you back. This June 7th through 10th, we're inviting the most aligned members from our community to join us for this retreat. We've thoughtfully designed this experience to be intimate, powerful, and deeply aligned with the work we've been doing together on the podcast. You'll be sharing a beautiful double room accommodation with another spiraler, someone hand-selected just for you based on birth chart synastry, ensuring a deeply enriching connection. From morning meditations and breath work to guided workshops and leisure time in the sun and sand, every moment is designed to support your transformation. With all meals, all activities included, even transportation to and from the airport, all you need to bring is your openness to grow and connect. This is more than just a retreat. It's a call to tap into your intuition and authentic self in a community that was created just for you. This experience is ultimately for the women who are ready to step into their highest vibration and finally say yes to their deepest desires. And we have less than 10 spots available, so if you feel that nudge, that inner call to join us, don't hesitate. Head to the link in our show notes for more details. We can't wait to see you there.
I think this can feel hard initially to embody, but it really is about making your own peace and your own connection with yourself, as you said, more important than their approval. Because there is a way that we can actually embody this. I can survive their discomfort. I can survive this, I keep wanting to say disconnection, but it's not a disconnection or a disagreement. It's just differing opinions. And I think I think this is the form of self-love of, I really want to know what my truth is, and I don't want to have to hide and trick myself for the sake of somebody else's comfort. Because that is kind of what it comes down to too. I think it's our own safety, but I think in some ways we're also trying to protect the other person from discomfort of having that differing opinions too. I know that I have definitely done that too, where it's just sometimes easier because you also don't want to put them into a position where they have to maybe try to people please.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of this comes from some pretty deeply ingrained beliefs that come probably from our evolutionary history. But I think it's something along the lines of sameness equals love, right? And then this
Mm-hmm.
idea of introducing differences would equal conflict. And
Mm.
so we have to really learn how to reframe the experiences of differences as a really pleasant experience. Like differences can
Mm.
equal growth, differences can equal curiosity, differences can equal actually further connection. I feel like that happened in our relationship. What sort of
Yes.
initially connected us was a sense of sameness, but then what actually braided us together more strongly was actually the differences and the growth that we gained from that.
I love how you said braided. I've never heard you say that before.
Yeah, we're braided
I
together.
like that. Wait, what's the third strand of hair? That's me and you. Is it our differences that we're braided?
It literally is though. I think about how many things you can't create without other things. That sounded kind of stupid, but
Mm,
also on like a really if it's also could be sounding profound, right? It could sound profound. Like you need
that's most deep things.
that's exactly like they sound stupid when
Yeah,
you say them, but actually if you really think about it, you're like, "Wait,
so deep.
absolutely."
Yes.
Like there are so many
Yeah.
things that you can't create without a mixture of differing ingredients. Like oxygen or sorry, water. Water.
Mhm.
Water
Yes.
is
Yeah.
H2O. Like we need those two things to come together to create this one thing. And so I think that
Mhm.
there is such beauty in difference and I think we harm ourselves when we think that only through sameness we can find connection. And we also limit ourselves because we're not able to grow. Like imagine if the only people I hung out with and felt safe with originally before starting entrepreneurship were the people that I was hanging out with previously. Like I wouldn't be able to find or hit a new ceiling or experience an expanded perspective without being comfortable in spaces where people had very different opinions about what was possible for me. Like that was
Mhm.
uncomfortable and I had a different value system than them and a different belief system, but through engaging consciously and curiously, I could actually learn how to create a new value system that was more supportive of who I am. I didn't completely assume theirs either because Gina will tell you, but when we were in real estate, we met a lot of people who were, oh, yeah, like you got to grow like a big team and you got to do like,
Double your business every
yeah,
year.
thousands
Yeah.
of transactions per year. Like those were some of the people I was surrounding myself with. And I actually engaged with their viewpoints and their value systems with curiosity and openness. And honestly, I took some of those points, but I didn't completely assume them. And I was willing to accept that some of those people might have seen me as like not as hard of a worker. I'm pretty confident some of them thought that I was lazy as a realtor. I was doing just fine, but I wasn't growing this big team. I wasn't, going to every single real estate conference in the city. But again, I was able to take the parts that felt supportive for me and expansive for me and limit and sort of keep out the ones that were going to begin to damage my sense of self.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, when I was deciding to really unscale my business
Yeah.
in real estate and I was slowing way down, my team meetings were, we were doing breath work a lot of the times in the mornings. We got rid of goals altogether. And I remember we went to this event together, me and my team, and I was talking to somebody that I've known for a little while, and they're like, how's business going? And what are your goals for the year? And I was like, you know what? We don't have goals. And they literally looked at me like,
Hmm.
are you okay? Like you should probably he literally said you should probably get some goals, kind of like almost like reprimanding me, almost as if the reason why I was saying I don't have goals is because, oh, like, yeah, I don't have goals yet. It's bad. And I know I should. Almost like he thought I was saying it like that. But
Right.
I was like, no, I'm choosing to not have goals, like on purpose. This is not like I'm behind and forgot to do them. This is an active decision to no longer have those kind of metrics within our business and our company. And it was interesting for me to feel that energy because it was so strong. And I think that's what always baffles me, that for people pleasers, on the opposite end of a lot of these interactions is someone that's like force feeding you their opinion.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that we're trying to please that person a lot of the times, where they're just forcing that and we're just kind of unconsciously taking it. But in that moment, I mean, and thank God for all the work that I've done, because I was just able to observe the difference, but not from like the difference in opinion and values, but not from a place of, oh, he's right and I'm wrong, but more from, wow, like I'm so happy that mine is so different. Like it just showed me and confirmed why that's no longer my value system instead of, oh, that's what I should be. And I honestly didn't even try to convince him of mine. I was like, it's totally fine that you don't see it this way. You wouldn't, because that is what your value system is. So
Right.
how could you agree or see where I'm coming from if that is what you believe is best to scale and, be focused on only the numbers and, all of those types of things. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember that story really clearly. And like the reason why we wanted to have this conversation is because this type of people pleasing or authenticity suppression, if you will, it's so subtle and you won't really notice you've been doing it until you experience a really extreme dissatisfaction with your life. I personally believe that satisfaction comes from this inner and outer congruence with what our value system really is. So, if you're, for example, one of my values is travel, another one is freedom, another one is adventure. If I wasn't creating a life that was able to match what I internally value by creating experiences that are new for me. I love trying new things, like going to new places. I would feel deeply dissatisfied. And then let's say I grew up in a community that valued stability, the home, right? Those aren't necessarily not my values. They're just like not at the top of my list. I would feel this sense of wrongness towards myself, not necessarily other people, but I'd feel like something was wrong within me. And it's because I'm not experiencing this congruence. My life might currently look like, okay, I have a stable routine, I do the same thing every day. And I might be, yes, meeting the values of the people around me, but something within me is not settled, is not aligned. And so I think it's so important that when we start to awaken, we become deeply conscious of what do I genuinely like and value? And how can I spend my days creating a life that reflects that? I truly think that is the only happiness. And then beyond that, your extra cherry on top is meeting people who are doing the same thing in a similar way. And it doesn't mean they have to have the exact same value system, but someone who is deeply fulfilled by their outer life being coherent with their inner life. That's like a beautiful recipe for connection, because if each person is trying to figure out how do I please these people and how do I make these people like me, you're not going to be able to connect on anything deep.
Not on anything real,
Not on
no.
anything real. And I think I have a
No.
lot of respect for people who don't necessarily have my value system, but who are living a life that is reflective of their values. And we're able to connect on that. It's not necessarily that
Yes.
like we have the exact same value system, but when they see me like creating a life that's reflective of my values and they're experiencing my energetic fulfillment, they're like, that's fucking dope. I'm doing the same thing. Like I'm trying to do this and my life is a reflection of that. And I'm like, see, we're both trying to create a life that's reflective of our values. And that is what makes us feel connected.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of my major dilemma a few years ago when I was debating whether or not to have another kid. And I would say that
Yes.
that was one of the most sneaky people pleasing things that I honestly, even now, I mean, now I can see that it was a form of people pleasing, but certainly at the time, I did not, because people were so emphatic with their opinions and how wrong it was for me to only want one kid. And, oh, but you shouldn't be so focused on career. And that way you'll have, having more kids will force you to focus on your family and not your career. It was so insane to me how many people were so like insistent on this perspective of having more than one kid is better. And
Hmm.
what I found that was happening inside of me, because I didn't believe that. I don't think that there is a number of kids that's better than anything. Like you said, it comes so down to your value system and what kind of life you want to have,
Hmm.
your capacity, your just so many things, your history, like what you want to do in your life. All of those things matter. But what I found was the sign of people pleasing in that scenario was how much convincing energy I had. I was trying to convince these
Mm.
people to see it my way. Or even there was an internal dialogue inside of me that was like, why do they think of it that way? And they should look at it like this. And I can't believe they're not seeing it this way. And all of that is a form of me trying to resolve the, I guess, internalized conflict of these are two differing opinions. And it was very uncomfortable for me to walk around and keep on claiming that this is what I want to do because of how many people were against it.
Yeah.
And like you said, I felt wrong in a lot of ways, even though I knew that this is what I wanted. Like it was
Right.
these two different parts of me. Like I knew I'm not wrong, but there was another part of me that was still acting as if I was wrong. and still
Exactly.
trying to convince the people of why I'm not wrong and why you should agree with me. And so I think, yeah, that might be another symptom of people pleasing, is if you're noticing that when you have a differing opinion or differences in value systems, is there a part of you that's really stuck on trying to convince them otherwise?
Yeah, or just spending a lot of time waffling. I mean, you waffled for like a couple years. And I mean, no judgment about that. I was totally there for it and offering as objective of opinion as I could. I never told you it was better to have one. I never told you it was better to have two. My whole thing with you was, what do you think? And I remember that was so hard for you to answer at the time because what you thought was being so drowned out by other opinions. And I actually told you, I don't want you to talk about this with anyone for like several months because you were going on forums, you were talking to other moms, like you were looking everywhere except for within yourself. And that's a very normal thing that we do. Obviously, we look for reassurance, we look for advice, and that's not necessarily a bad thing either. But for the place you were in at your life at that time, I just remember saying, just don't ask anyone for the next bit. Just sit with what life you want to create and see what answer comes through, and like just let it take a while. I remember you also had this pressure to know the answer more quickly than you could know it, and I was like, just take your time.
Yeah, I think you're so dead on with all of that. I think at the end of the day, like the checking and asking and wanting that validation, like I definitely was noticing that I wanted to find more parents that only had one kid.
Hmm.
Because and for me, I feel like that's not actually a bad thing. I feel like it's good to find evidence of, um, again, not because it gives you permission to do that, but I feel like there's a lot of people that we often will tell our clients to find evidence of, to kind of prove their inner theories wrong. Like, as an example, somebody who might believe that life has to be hard. Sometimes I think it can be helpful to look for examples of people that we know and care about where their life doesn't feel hard to them. So I think for me, what I was seeking, part of me was seeking, was examples of people who had an only child. And yeah, I just needed that kind of template because there were so many templates around me. I honestly don't have any friends that only have one kid. I don't.
Hmm.
And so all the templates around me were saying have two kids. And the templates were also telling me that you feel like this now, but you're going to feel differently later. And so, like, that was also messing with my head because I feel like with something like having a kid, it's such a permanent decision. Like, there's no refunds or returns on that, right? So, I think that's another reason why there was more of that kind of pressure with time and stuff like that. But I will say that near the end of when I really knew this isn't what I want to do, that's when I think a lot of the waffling did start to happen. And I was checking and wanting that kind of validation,
Hmm.
until I finally landed in the place where you had told me to love my reasons.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is you have to actually know what those reasons are. And that's what we were
Yes.
speaking to at the beginning of this episode, where we do need to know, like, what are my value systems and where did they come from? Do I even still agree with them? Because I'll tell you
Yeah.
this, in my wise old age, I will say that in the past 20 years of my life, since being 20, like, my values have changed. I've added new values. I've let go of values. I would say my core values are probably still the same, but even what I value in a friendship is so different than what I valued when I was 20. And so we do need to keep taking inventory of what are our value systems, and do these still align? Do these still make sense for me in this moment, in this present version of me? Um, yeah, because I feel like that's who we should be checking with.
Yeah. We should be checking in with obviously ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like you do, to echo what you said, you do have to know what your reasons are. So
Hmm.
after I had this like little momentary weakness of like, am I wrong about the way I'm living my life? Like I actually had that moment for like an hour. I was like,
Totally.
wait, but why am I living my life the way that I am? And then
Yeah.
I remembered and I was like, oh, that's why. And so it also has made me over time sort of exit this paradigm of an inherent right or wrong, right? Because that's what we do. We're like, are they right or am I wrong? And it really is this new paradigm of right for me, wrong for me, right for them, wrong for them. And I think it's so hard for us to actually integrate that because we're so, again, like that whole internalized belief I talked about earlier, the sameness equals love and belonging. The differences might lead to conflict. If that's not a belief that we've challenged, then the idea that something's right for me and wrong for you wouldn't compute. You know what I'm saying? So like, and you know what's interesting? Like all of our differences, because we have changed our relationship to what differences mean, have allowed us to be more authentically who we are in this relationship. There are actually many decisions that I make that are so wrong for Gina. So wrong.
100%.
And vice versa. And I don't ever think to myself, like, am I wrong for doing this? Like, because I know that I'm a different person with a different value system. And Gina doesn't make that mean that she's inferior or superior to me. We just respect the authentic differences that we have, which honestly allow us to be more connected than ever. Because if I felt like I couldn't tell you about a decision that I was making that I somehow know wouldn't be the decision that you made because you're a different person, then I can't authentically share with you my motivations, my desires, my fears. We actually can't connect. And one of the commitments that you and I have made to each other is that we're always going to be Team Sam. We're always going to be Team Gina. I'm never going to try to make you make a decision that is in alignment with my value system, because we already respect that we do have different values. Obviously, we have shared ones too, but yeah, we can actually have an authentic connection without respecting that there are going to be things that are right for me, wrong for you, and vice versa.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, because part of why you can even know what would be aligned with my values is because there is safety in me even telling you what they are. And like you said, what my reasons are. And if I'm not authentically able to share that because there's fear of losing you or fear of disconnection, then it would continue to perpetuate the distance and the gap between our values.
Yes.
Because you would never be able to understand them because I'm not able to communicate them.
Right. That is what creates a distance. I think like if you don't have enough intimacy and trust to be able to share what your reasons are without feeling like you're going to be shamed or rejected, then I'm literally just going to be like, I don't know why you're like that.
Exactly. Like with the kid example, if I couldn't give you my reasons and I was just like, I don't know, I just don't want to. And you were somebody who did believe that having more than one kid was better, you would just walk around thinking, see, like she doesn't know. She just doesn't know, because I'm not actually able to voice why. On honestly, this happened a lot, I think, in my childhood. I think with my parents and them kind of infusing me with what they thought was right for me, and I couldn't tell them my reasons. I mean, they just weren't really open to them, and so I feel like they continue to believe that I just didn't know any better and that I wouldn't make the right choice because I wasn't actually able to show them, hey, I have thought about this. This is a conscious decision for me. I have thought about all of those other things that you guys are thinking about, but I can't share with you what my truth is because it's not safe. So then I continue to people please.
Wow. Yeah, I had a different experience in childhood, as you know. Like I felt very comfortable expressing, not like in early childhood, but as I became a teen, I felt pretty comfortable expressing differing opinions. And I remember my mom was very against me moving to New York to become a professional ballerina. I literally came home on a Wednesday and I was like, I'm flying there on Friday. And like, they were like, okay. And my mom definitely tried to argue against it. And I'll never forget, we had this like little showdown, and she laughs about it now, but it actually really changed her opinion of me and her opinion about the situation. But one of the arguments I made was, Mom, I'm not here on earth just to make a living. I'm here to make a life. And that was a really good way of me explaining and expressing my reasons and my value for going.
Yes.
And she actually like was a bit stunned by that. And she would say even to this day that she realized in that moment that she had made our lives about trying to help us ensure that we were going to make a living, as if that was the only important thing. And I'm not trying to say it's not important, but I was clearly valuing something else, because she's probably scared about this whole like starving artist archetype. But when I was able to show her that I'd clearly thought it through, but I was still choosing it because I wanted to choose myself and what I valued and what I was passionate about. And there was a deep respect that was actually gained in that moment. My mom didn't perceive me as someone who was just like making a huge fucking mistake and like moving to New York. She was like, oh, okay, she's gonna go make a life there pursuing what she loves. Like, I've actually never done that, and I'm gonna let her go. And so, yeah, I think that when we are able to safely express our reasons, we can deeply respect and hold the two truths being possible at once.
Yeah. Oh, I love that story. I feel like that's something Emmeline would say to me.
It was so dramatic. I was like, Mom, I'm not here to make a living. I'm here to make a life. It was like, yeah, it was very powerful. I don't know where it came from. It came from like my soul.
But yeah, like notice those voices though, right? Because in the example I gave earlier, I think sometimes our voice starts to shrink because there's a loud voice externally that is so adamant and so strong that we kind of then succumb to that voice. And in this example, the two energies were actually equal.
Yeah.
She had her opinion and so did you. And you weren't kind of willing to negotiate on that. You were just like, but this is what I still think, even though you still think that. And I think when it can be in that equal kind of energetic exchange, people can hear each other a lot better and we don't have to shrink. But I think that's one of the cues that I have is when I start to just notice, again, it's a somatic thing. If I start to notice that maybe I'm putting on a smile or I'm kind of just nodding along, when I kind of, you feel that gut kind of sensation, right? We all have that, and everyone might be feeling a little bit of a different sensation, but there is a sensation. And when we attune to that, I think that gets to be the signal of, oh, there's something here, something's being flagged. And that's exactly what happened to you in this interaction with that person you talked to. And so I think that really is the kind of solution or the step forward if you're noticing yourself in some of these patterns or themes, is just to observe what does your body do and start to really take inventory of what those values are and what is important to you, and even practice speaking on them. I think that's one of the things too, but between you and I, like I did practice a lot around what my reasons were around not having another kid. And man, now when people talk to me about it, I am unshakable.
You are
Like,
unshakable.
unshakable.
Yeah, those reasons are so strong. And I also think that a really beautiful byproduct and result of having very clear reasons, and maybe we pretty much already said this, but it really helps people develop respect.
Yeah.
And I think respect is a beautiful thing that can happen in the presence of differences. Like, I know people who have beliefs that I would not care to live by, but their reasons for living by those beliefs or values, I can deeply respect. And that naturally fosters a sense of connection and belonging. Because can we really connect with people if we don't have any mutual respect? Probably not. And so, yeah, being very clear on your value system, even if it wildly differs from mine, knowing what your reasons are is going to be the basis of a very interesting conversation. And at the end of it, we're probably going to feel deeply respectful of each other and our viewpoints. And that alone can be the foundation for a friendship.
Well, here's what's going on underneath that is that when you know your reasons and you've taken that time, you have self-respect. You have respected your own internal beliefs and truths. And that is what's being mirrored in that relationship. Is they're respecting your self-respect.
Wow. Gina Gem. It's so true. It's always a mirror, right? And so if we're not having this respect and this commitment and this connection to our own values, I think people can tell. And that's when you're more easily swayed.
Yes. That's the thing, is when somebody is really opinionated and they're force feeding you their opinion, ultimately it's that they're just so deeply rooted in what their reasons are and their truth, and they deeply respect what they believe. And so if you haven't done the internal work of creating your own value system, of course that's going to infringe on yours because they're rooted. And yours is like this broken branch maybe of belief and trust within yourself in what your reasons are. And so it's very easily kind of blown away in some ways. And so taking this time to really know the values and why they're important to you and even questioning them.
I think that this conversation it actually ended up being deeper than I thought it was going to be. I mean, that's kind of the intention behind this podcast, I suppose.
We were spiraling deeper.
Yeah, we were spiraling deeper. I was like, man, this is actually better than I thought it was going to be. Because sometimes Gina and I just start off with the intention and being like a couple sentences of what we want to share. And then it just takes on a life of its own, honestly. Spiraling Higher as an entity has its own energy that we just tap into together. But I really hope that by the end of this episode, you've been able to become clear on some of the behaviors, some of the ways that you shift in the presence of other people's strongly held value systems or belief, and that it's inspired you to become really clear on what your value system is, what your belief system is, and if you can genuinely love your reasons for choosing to live by that value system. Furthermore, are we also creating a life on the external that reflects that? And if you are, amazing. You probably feel pretty aligned, pretty coherent. You're connecting with people over that. And if not, you have the rest of your life to begin building that. And that gets to be your journey. So no matter where you are, it's perfect.
It's perfect no matter where you are. And again, I think we get to practice the muscle of being able to communicate what our values are, especially when there's really strongly opposing ones. And we get to practice observing where our people-pleasing tendencies might be kind of sneaking in. And that's just it. It is a practice. And we get to keep exercising this muscle. So there's no expectation that once you listen to this, you just no longer do this ever again. Because even for us, like we sometimes still notice it kind of creeping in. And so yeah, take your time. Take your time to respect yourself enough to really take the journey of getting to know yourself over and over again.
Beautiful. We will see you in the next one.
Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.